Welcome, mayors. We are glad to have you for our fourth session of the 2024 Economic Mobility Leadership Institute Mayoral Cohort 2.0. We affectionately refer to AMA's groundbreaking financial literacy program as EMLI. My name is Stacy Fujii with the African American Mayors Association. As the second official EMLI cohort, we welcome you to get acquainted with one another as you will journey together these next 12 months to increase the development of generational wealth for your constituencies through customized financial literacy programming and tools. Welcome, everyone. For the next 4 months, we will meet for an hour twice a month to discuss issues pertaining to wealth building, homeownership, insurance, land usage, student loans, and wills and trust. Today is our final session on homeownership with presentations from our partners at Results for America, Wells Fargo, and the Mortgage Bankers Association. If you have missed previous sessions or would like for your staff to watch our previous sessions, they are available to you via our AMA YouTube channel and on our EMLI grid. Please let us know if you have any issues retrieving them. We have a couple of housekeeping items to consider. First, by now, you should have received a LinkedIn invitation to be in our EMLI 2.0 private group. The LinkedIn group will be an important way the cohort shares additional information from our guest and will serve as a way for AMA to communicate with you and your designated staff. Please make sure your main contact has a LinkedIn account and please accept the invitation or let Darren Vason or myself know if your contact has not received an invitation. Second, as cohort members, your strategic plans will be supported with a $30,000 grant to be used to support your efforts. We will follow up with you regarding the best way for your city to receive the monies. Finally, we strongly encourage you to begin to think about what kind of programming or events you would like to host in your own cities that pertain to the topics we discuss. We are covering 6 topics, and you will be expected to create events around these topics. For example, today's session is about home ownership. Please begin to consider what an event would look like in your community. You may create a home ownership event, or you may already have a program set up to increase home ownership. Either way, we would like for you to take the information and tools that you learn about during EMLI to create or enhance programming for your constituents. Today, we will have office hours directly following this session to help you flesh out your ideas. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our CEO, Phyllis Dickerson, for the welcome.
Thanks, Stacy. Welcome, mayors, to EMLI's fourth EMLI session. It is great to see everyone, and I'm so pleased to welcome EMLI 2.0. The mayors from the city of Riceville, Arkansas, North Lauderdale, Florida, East Point, Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, Campton, Louisiana, Baltimore, Maryland, Greenville, Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, Durham, North Carolina, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Memphis, Tennessee, and last but not least, Newport News, Virginia. As you know, AMA's Economic Mobility Leadership Institute is focusing on critical learning opportunities for mayors and their teams with the goal of creating strategic economic mobility plans to implement in your respective municipalities. Today, we begin our session on home ownership. Based on what you have learned and will hear today, we would like for you to draft what is compelling and innovative event around home ownership would look like for your constituents. As your creative minds begin to consider the assignment, today's guest from Results for America will share with you economic mobility catalog that will provide examples of what we're looking for. This catalog may serve as your inspiration, and today Ross will show you how to use it. We encourage you to join us today for our office hours to ask any questions. We will do this type of exercise after each topic, and at the end of our listening and learning phase, you should have 6 well thought out programs that will become your strategic plan. For the next 4 months, industry experts will share their knowledge and tools that will help you develop a customized strategic plan. The second half of EMLI will consist of you receiving your grant funding and implementing your plans by hosting events in your respective cities. We hope you see the value of this cohort and ask that you submit feedback in your monthly survey coming in the following days. Thank you for your participation and kind consideration. Back to you, Stacy.
Thank you, Phyllis. I know we've given you lots of information, and we will follow up with each of you to make sure your questions are answered, not only today, but throughout the year. We are here to support you. So without further ado, let's begin. During EMLI, we will introduce you to several tools, or what we like to call public goods, that will help you and your staff create effective programs to grow and nurture economic mobility for your constituents. Today, you will learn about the Economic Mobility Catalog. The purpose of using this tool is to assist you in shaping your efforts as you build your strategic plans. Ross Tilchin is the director of the Economic Mobility Catalog on the solutions team at Results for America. He is here to reinforce the catalog's importance and to answer any questions you may have. Please welcome Ross to EMLI.
Stacy, thank you so much. And Phyllis, thank you. Always so great to see you guys. Tremendous honor to be here with you today. Mayors, let me switch my view so I can see your faces. Okay, there you are. So hello, I'm Ross Tilchin, Director of Economic Mobility at Results for America. I'm joined today by my colleague, Leslie Gruber. Leslie, would you like to briefly introduce yourself to the mayors, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Leslie Gruber. I am the senior manager on Ross's team at Results for America. I've been with RFA for about a year and actually joined from the policy team in the Chicago mayor's office. So have some experience in all of your world.
Yes, Leslie is bringing quite a bit of real life advisory experience to the catalog team, having worked with the Lightfoot administration. We're going to be sticking around for office hours after this presentation. Leslie and I are going to be happy to answer any of the questions that you might have about this resource. So we hope that you'll stick around. We hope that we can be useful. But without further ado, let's jump into the Economic Mobility Catalog. Let me share my screen real quick. Let's go into slideshow mode. This working, guys? Great. Okie dokie. Real quick on Results for America. We're a national nonprofit, officially nonpartisan. Our mission is to help government leaders use data and evidence more effectively as they're making decisions. We want to see the impact of public dollars increase in ways that advance economic opportunity and close racial gaps across the country. Real quick, you guys all know this, you live this every day. I just want to sort of ground us in why we created the Economic Mobility Catalog. And one fundamental truth is that economic opportunity is very unequally distributed across this country. Some regions see much higher levels of opportunity than others. And even within particular cities or regions, as we all know, neighborhoods vary tremendously in the level of economic opportunity that children from low-income families face. This map shows you the likelihood of a child from a low-income family rising through the socioeconomic ranks and earning significantly more than their parents. This is just a quick little zoom in on Houston for the sake of example. So looking at this map, Results for America kind of arrived at a few different conclusions. First, it's that local decisions really matter. As we can see with this unequal distribution of opportunity, a lot of that is the result of policy decisions. So we are strong believers in the power of local government to address some of those disparities in opportunity across the country. The good news is that there are a lot of effective solutions that are out there that, if implemented well, can increase the level of opportunity that we're seeing in some of those neighborhoods and in some of those regions that see lower levels of opportunity in the present day. The question, as I'm sure you all know, is that the implementation of effective strategies makes or breaks the effectiveness of what's been put into place. If a strategy has been proven elsewhere, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work in a new place. What matters is the quality of implementation. So with these sort of truths on the board, we at Results for America created the Economic Mobility Catalog. So this is a tool to help you and your staff identify and implement strategies that have the strongest evidence in improving economic mobility in some way. Separated, as you'll see in a few minutes, into a range of policy areas and economic mobility outcomes. And what we've tried to do is surface the strategies that have the best evidence and answer as many questions as we can that we think and hope you might have when you're encountering a new strategy. Things like, where else has this been implemented? How much is this going to cost? If I implement this well, what's the result actually going to be? What can I expect to happen if we implement this sort of thing? So just a rhetorical question in the interest of time, although I'd love to discuss this in our Q&A, is when your staff comes to you or when you first hear about a new strategy that might be a good fit in your community, what are the sorts of questions that you ask? What are the first sort of lines of interrogation that you are curious about when some new opportunity crosses your desk? So like I said, rhetorical just for now, but maybe we can discuss this in our Q&A after the presentation. Whoops, we're going to dive into the resource in 1 second, just to signpost where we're going here. 4 main kinds of content in the resource. Strategy guides, which give you high-level best practices on broad approaches that we know improve economic mobility. So example that we've got here is strategies to increase housing stability and decrease displacement. We have program briefs that cover specific models, and these dive really deep into the evidence behind the effectiveness of these strategies. Over 200 of these program models in the catalog. We've got 55 case studies that tell the story of how particular jurisdictions have implemented these strategies that have good evidence. I'm just going to say right now that we're always looking for more case studies. So if there are initiatives that you are really proud of in your community, we would love to hear those stories. We'd love to talk with you about the possibility of a case study. And then we have essentially self-guided curricula that build off of other RFA programming where you could have your staff walk through sort of a self-guided curriculum to implement specific strategies that have a positive impact on mobility. Okay, that's all my signposting. I'm now going to do a really quick buzz through the resource. I know we have not a ton of time, but I just want to show you this website so you get a sense of what we're talking about here. So here's the catalog. You guys can see the screen. This has successfully shifted. Yeah, okay, great. This is the catalog. As I said before, we have organize this resource by both issue area and by economic mobility relevant outcome. For the purposes of this conversation, let's dive into our housing and community development issue area. As you'll recall, we first have those high-level strategy guides that articulate best practices across individual, or excuse me, sort of high-level approaches. So here you can see within this, we have, let's say, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of a dozen separate strategies. Let's go into housing stability and displacement prevention. This is the template that we have for all 55 of our strategy guides. I'm going to scroll really fast through these, again, just in the interest of time. Overview of the strategy. We give you a snapshot of the evidence that supports it, a set of metrics that you can use to see if this would be a good fit for your community. This builds off of the work of the Urban Institute, another partner of ours and of AMA. We have a range of best practices and implementation. And we have our case studies. Real quick, I'll also just show you that we have our program models here. I won't dive into these, but these are those specific briefs on the most evidence-based approaches here. Let's dive into a case study just real quick. This is a case study in Newark, New Jersey. This highlights the right to counsel effort that was implemented in that city several years ago. We provide you with an executive summary of what happened, of course, highlight some of the results and accomplishments that Newark has been able to achieve. We're telling the civic story here. So what was the challenge that Newark was facing? How was the right to counsel initiative the right solution to this challenge that Newark was facing? What factors drove success? What were the major obstacles that needed to be overcome? These are pretty deep, and I know I'm just scrolling a lot. Happy to chat more about this when we're in Q&A. A timeline of the key events that led to the implementation of this initiative and its ongoing operations and expansion. And then a bit of a thematic breakdown around how did leaders really come to the table on this, decide this was a major issue that needed addressing? What did that design process look like? We were talking about implementation before. The way that a program is designed on the front end has a really important bearing on how effective it's going to be going forward. Funding, of course, we know this is critically important. Key activities leading up to and following launch. And then how has the approach been measured and refined? I know I'm running up on time here, but I just want to show you a map view of all of the case studies that we have in the catalog. So as you could see, pretty deep case studies here. We've got 55 of them across all of our policy areas. And again, this is a library that is constantly growing. So if you've got stories that you think should be told to a national audience, we are eager to tell them. Let's talk. The last thing that I want to share with you, I'm going to skip a few slides here because I was a little bit long-winded, is that, back into slideshow mode here. We are hoping to engage directly with as many jurisdictions as we can with the catalog this year. So it is our hope that if the catalog feels interesting to you and you think your staff might benefit from a deep dive into this resource, we are creating customized presentations. So we want to, we'll have some quick conversation with a member of your staff to understand the most acute priorities in your jurisdictions. We would love to meet with a handful of your staff members to give them a customized presentation that, is drawing on data from your community. It's making specific recommendations based off of the data we're able to pull, just to get folks comfortable and familiar with the catalog and hopefully to accelerate progress on the implementation of solutions. Leslie is leading a lot of that work. That's part of why I asked her to be here. Would love to chat more about this if this feels like it may be of interest. Okay, Stacy, I hope I didn't terribly abuse my time here. That's all for me. Happy to answer your questions that you might have.
That was perfect, Ross. We actually have some time for some questions. Please feel free to use your chat feature or just jump in. I will say that one of our goals, in addition to using this fantastic public good, is having some things that we get to add to this catalog from this experience. So when we think about your events that you have, we'd very much like to see, Wrightsville, Arkansas in there for the compelling homeownership program that they did, or East Point, Georgia. So when it comes time for us to have the events and collect the data, we'll be sticklers because we want to be able to offer it up to Ross to be included in this catalog.
Again, we are eager to tell your stories. So really excited about this possibility and hope we're going to be able to lift up the great work that you guys do as a part of this cohort.
Okay. Do we have any questions in the chat?
We do. Looks like we just got one.
Okay.
So case studies and reports have been gathered largely through pretty deep consultation with experts. So things flow through the strategy guides that we have created. So that was built off of this very large library of evidence-based programs. We essentially group things into themes. And we want to create case studies for each of those themes, more or less. So once we had published those strategy pages and we're building out case studies for them, this often starts with pretty deep conversations with the expert community on those pages. So Leslie has led a process where we're expanding these pages, includes trying to find sort of the best and brightest in each of those subject areas and asking them, what are the most interesting places that have implemented this strategy well? It starts there. one thing that we're really trying hard to do, and there's definitely room for improvement here, is once we have a set of communities that have done a good job implementing a particular strategy, we try to tell the stories of places that are small and mid-size, off the coasts, ideally, places that may have a little bit less capacity than others in terms of their staff. We know that it's not that interesting or useful to write a whole bunch of case studies about New York City or Washington, D.C. or San Francisco, Chicago, that sort of thing. So whenever possible, we really like to tell stories of small and mid-sized cities. And there's a little bit of art that goes into this rather than a pure science, but we do want as much sort of geographic spread as we can get as well. So it's a little bit of a subjective decision. Mostly we're looking to tell good stories here. The reports and sort of evidence is also gathered from experts, but we draw quite a bit from the federal clearinghouses that have sort of aggregated the most rigorous evidence for programs. So federal government has this pretty significant research apparatus that's organizing the best research. We synthesize that and then create this content that's a little bit more implementation focused, just because we recognize that having these things in purely academic form tends not to be that useful if you're trying to push towards action. Process on city submissions. Just email us. We would love to chat.
And Ross and I guess all the Results for America team, we can make their contact information available to you through our LinkedIn group. And Ross, with regard to having the cities speak to you with the curated information for their city, is that something that you want them to reach out to you individually, or would you like for us to maybe schedule a time for you and then you can, how would you like for us to handle that? Because we want to make sure that opportunity is not lost.
Yeah, let's chat about this. I don't want to spam folks' inboxes, but this is an opportunity that we're really excited about. We would love to, take that significantly deeper step with each of you. So Stacy and Phyllis, maybe we could connect and decide on the best way to do this after this call.
Very good. Very good. Well, we look forward, Ross, to talking to you for office hours today, and we appreciate your amazing presentation. So we'll move on to Wells Fargo. Thank you so much, Results
Thanks so
for
much.
America team. All right. Well, we are honored to have Iwana K. Brady, Vice President, Head of Home Lending African American Segment, Lending Diverse Segments from Wells Fargo and Company. As the African American segment lead for Wells Fargo Home Lending, Ms. Brady partners across the business and with external stakeholders, advocacy groups, and industry trade associations to increase lending opportunities to African Americans across all income segments. We are also joined by Quentin S. Lacewell of the Wells Fargo Government Relations and External Relations team. He is attending virtually for any questions and follow-up. Please remember to use the chat feature to ask questions throughout the session. And please welcome our distinguished guest to Emily.
Great. Thank you, Stacey. Thank you, Phyllis. I just want to make sure you all can hear me okay. Great. Ross, it was wonderful to have visibility into the work that you're leading at Results for America. This was my first exposure to it, and I'm glad I've been able to have this introduction to it. So that was great. I appreciate the opportunity to address this esteemed gathering of alma mayors as part of the EMLI cohort. And I'm thrilled to be able to share with everyone today. As shared, I am Iwana K. Brady. Good afternoon. I do lead home lending. I'm the head of home lending for African American segment at Wells Fargo, and I lead the critical work within mortgage to advance Black homeownership. But before we jump into kind of all things homeownership, I'd love to pause and invite my colleague Quentin Lacewell to introduce himself to the group.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Quentin Lacewell of Wells Fargo, certainly no stranger here to the Alma family, having served in administration of 3 mayors, some very familiar with you all. Excited to greet you all for the first time on this side of the private sector, member of the Business Council, and to have my colleague Awanike here with you, all to share her knowledge and expertise and all that she's doing with us here at Wells Fargo. I also like to publicly acknowledge her for the great work that she is doing. As many of you have seen it and inquired about, we have the different World College Tour, and you all have inquired about it and just how excited you all have been about it. And Awanike has been killing the game, leading us throughout these activations. So thank you all again for this opportunity, and I'd like to turn it back over to my more than competent colleague, Iman.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Just a little background about myself. I'm based here in Gaithersburg, Maryland, just outside our nation's capital. My name is Nigerian. It means daughter of a warrior. I am also the daughter of a Marine Corps veteran who got their first home using their VA benefits. And my dad also flew one of the all-black helicopter squadrons, one of the few. There's not many in the Marine Corps. I am the descendant of grandparents who were part of the Great Migration West out to Los Angeles, California. So my family hails from the Watts area of Los Angeles. And I understand the loss of generational wealth as it relates to being locked out of a system that wasn't really built to support Black homeownership. So this is work that is my passion work, and I'm excited to join you all today to talk about this. I know I have a very finite amount of time, so I'm going to speak to the work I lead in two veins. And the first being products and programs that reach Wells Fargo's customers and consumers that are having impact present day in our communities. And then I'm going to speak to the work in planting seeds and providing education, access to resources, and outreach in our communities. I lead my team under the mantra of legacy work. We are planting seeds to create a legacy of increased Black homeownership. And so rates played a major role in wealth realized and unrealized during COVID. One space that is an unfortunate truth among purchase behaviors of Black borrowers is the low rate of refinancing. It's no secret for Black borrowers and homeowners, the propensity to refinance is extremely low. And so many African-American homeowners did not take advantage of the low rate environment during 2019, 2022, which prompted us to look at how we, Wells Fargo, can play an active role in providing access to our African-American consumers and customers by utilizing a special purpose credit program focused on refinancing. So in 2022, Wells Fargo announced a special purpose credit program, and it really was to help our minority homeowners whose mortgages were currently serviced by Wells Fargo to refinance the mortgages to a lower mortgage rate and reduce refinancing costs. And so Wells Fargo committed $150 million to this effort, and this helped more than 4,100 existing Black Wells Fargo customers to refinance. This was something that was of no cost to them. It was an opportunity to take advantage of the savings of having a lower interest rate. Again, so I'm deeply passionate about advancing Black homeownership and incredibly proud of the work that we lead at Wells Fargo in this space. We have been and continue to be a bank lender that is leading in the mortgage originations to African-American borrowers. And this isn't solely to, toot our own horn. It's to magnify that the work we lead in this space is with thought and it's with care. And when we're touching so many households across the country, our ability to scale has to be intentional. And it's very critical that we keep that front of mind. So while we've created and implemented special purpose credit programs for our Wells Fargo customers, we've also provided industry guidance by serving as subject matter experts in the development of the Mortgage Bankers Association Special Purpose Credit Toolkit. And then this really equips the industry with a blueprint on how to create special purpose credit programs stemming from our learnings and expertise in mortgage and finance. We participated in this work, again, that was led by the Mortgage Bankers Association in collaboration with the National Fair Housing Alliance. You will hear from Wendy Penn shortly, who leads some additional efforts that Wells Fargo supports in the housing landscape. So our special purpose credit program offering has evolved from just being a rate refinance to purchase transactions. So in 2023, it became a purchase grant for $10,000 through what we've coined our Home Buyer Access Grant, which is available in 8 markets across the country. That includes Atlanta, Georgia, Baltimore, Maryland, Charlotte, North Carolina, Dallas, Texas, Minneapolis, Minnesota. It includes MSAs within New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, and then rounding it out in Washington, D.C. And then the last product that I'll share is our Dream Plan Home Mortgage and our Dream Plan Home Closing Cost Credit. Why they went with the same name, it's a little bit confusing sometimes for folks, but both of the products really offer some really great features. And these are impactful products that we know to date. Down payment and cash to close are 2 areas that continue to be barriers to home ownership. So with our Dream Plan Home product, this provides as low as 3% down, and the closing costs can offer up to $5,000 in closing cost credit. And so this are those non-recurring fees, those one-time costs that come with the purchase of a home and taking on a mortgage. They can also be layered. So we can layer the closing cost credit with the 3% down program in addition to the $10,000 grant. On top of that, you can certainly layer any particular down payment assistance programs that are available within your municipalities. The only caveat to that is they certainly do need to follow agency guidelines and be sellable on the secondary market. So those will be some of the spaces that may have some nuances and some restrictions, but it does widen the gap, widens the opportunity to help close the gap for home ownership. And so that's really a snapshot of the products. The other half of the equation is making sure that the communities we serve are aware of their options, and being equally intentional about how we educate and create access to resources through our relationships and our trusted partners. I have the pleasure of collaborating across all of the 81 lines of businesses that are within Wells Fargo to help further touch and educate on home ownership. And this really speaks to the bigger picture. For many, the financial gains seen through COVID, we can attribute a large portion of that to equity that was realized through owning a home, right? Having home ownership. And these gains are assets that we want to not only see sustained, but growing. To that end, we have relationships with several nonprofits, civil rights organizations, community-centered groups, and we bring education and awareness around home ownership all across the country. We collaborate within our own lines of businesses. So with wealth and investment management, just as an example, we partner with the National Bar Association, which is comprised of, our Black judges, attorneys, magistrates, you name it. And we work together to educate our communities. And this is through what we call our Economic Empowerment Institute sessions. These are a series of trainings that happen across the country to offer legal advice on wills, trusts, estates, how to protect and transfer generational wealth, with grounding in education that you start that journey through home ownership. We just recently held one in Philadelphia where tangled titles, right, heirs property, were the core focus of this educational series. So both with Wells Fargo Financial Advisors and Wells Fargo Home Lending Mortgage Consultants, these would be loan officers, work in tandem with the National Bar to deliver these sessions and work with the community at large, just to give you an example. Some other spaces, we sponsor along with Fannie Mae and AMA, the 100 City Building Black Wealth Tour with the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. Most of you all know them as NAREB, under the leadership of Dr. Courtney Johnson Rose as the current president, who is amazing and fantastic to work with. NAREB hosted 100 community days on the same day across the country, coast to coast. We were able to support in 27 of those markets. However, we did sponsor the full national rollout of this event in an opportunity to educate 25,000 Black consumers and over 2,000 consumers virtually. These are amazing impacts that we're having in our communities. These efforts were recognized by President Biden's administration and acknowledgement of the efforts to help close the homeownership gap. We host advancing homeownership fairs in markets. Again, this does span all across the country. We are looking to bring these more to our HBCU campuses and really talking about the ability to successfully transition from a college dorm to a first home. This is really a phenomenal opportunity for students to be at the forefront and being part of driving that change to close the gap in home ownership. I believe, Ross, one of your first slides, you spoke to the income of families and young children and what that's doing in markets. And if you think about Generation Alpha, which is my daughter's generation, I have a 7-year-old. This generation is what's driving current home purchases because the parents of those children are what are making decisions to become homeowners. Generation Alpha is the largest generation to come into play, larger than millennials, larger than baby boomers, and they are digital natives. You know, these are the kids that were born during COVID, that started pre-K and kindergarten online. And so the things that are needed to support Generation Alpha, or where we're paying a lot of attention to because they're driving their parents' decisions and how they engage. And so certainly having that ability to educate the entire family, from the littlest ones up to, you know, seniors, it is a great span of knowledge to help infuse financial education and financial empowerment in our communities. So Quentin had shared earlier a little bit about our sponsorship of the A Different World Tour. We also sponsor the CIAA, MEAC events, United Negro College Fund, and many, many more HBCU Forward initiatives. We just concluded a great cohort with the Mortgage Bankers Association, where we had HBCU students as mentees, certainly to create space and opportunity to grow the next generation of mortgage and finance careers and individuals that can work in this space. It's not enough just to grow home ownership. We also want to make sure that we're diversifying the workforce that's going to be leading this industry, participating in creating new space, whether it's through appraisals, whether it's through originations, servicing, capital markets. We need to make sure that we have diversity at all facets of this space and within the mortgage and finance industry. And we want to take an active role in participating in that. We certainly understand the value, the pivotal role that HBCUs played in growing and maintaining the Black middle class, and we're committed to continuing to bolster support of our country's most storied institutions. So I'll just kind of close out with just a few final comments. We certainly understand that safe, affordable housing is a key pillar of the American dream. It's a pathway to financial success for our customers, and it's a source of stability in our communities. At Wells Fargo, we remain fully committed to address the racial homeownership gap, both internally and through close collaboration with industry partners and partners such as yourself. And we strive to increase Black homeownership, our lending to traditionally underserved communities, by being part of ways that we can remove systemic impediments to homeownership and really being part of the solution and creating a more inclusive housing system. So really thrilled to have the opportunity to share with you today. Certainly open to take questions, and I'll kind of pause there for now.
Thank you so much, Unike. We would love for people to post in the chat if you have questions, or if you'd like to just jump in. We've got about 5 minutes before our next presentation.
And just to share, if there are, I know we talked about at the top of the hour, Wells is a highly regulated entity. So for we are disabled from being able to view the chat. So if there are questions, I'd have to ask for you to share them with us.
Okay, I see Mayor Rainey just posted something. Sir, would you like to go ahead and speak?
Yeah,
Oh, I think you just went back on mute.
okay. Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay, good. Yeah, it wasn't really a question, but just looking at how things are changing within the home buying market. I just closed on a new home build myself. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and she convinced me to buy a smart refrigerator, so she can draw on the screen and then track groceries that she wants. But at the same time, I know that it's very important, and I appreciate the work that you all are doing. And would love to see how that can reach our market as well. We did participate in the NARAB 100 City Community Day, where we had panels of um, appraisers, insurance agents, lawyers, as well as the full gamut of the home buying process, ABCs of home buying, what to do with Big Mama's house. And that was impactful for our residents. We look forward to doing it again in a bigger and larger way and more intentional. Um, but I was really interested to know about the partnership with the National Bar Association, because that's where we are really facing a lot of our challenges, which is land is being bought online through the state land commissions, and through people losing land due to tax delinquency. So I didn't know if you could share anything regarding Wells Fargo's role within that to help homeowners retain or at least um, reclaim land that may be lost or prevent that from happening.
Yeah, so one part of I don't have deep details to share with you. I can certainly get you connectivity in that space. One part of our team, the way we're structured, and we're actually the only lender that has this kind of structure within our group. We have a sustainability side of the house. So we talk a lot about getting folks, into home ownership, but you don't really hear the other half of the story, which is how to sustain and stay in. And, certainly a lender like Wells Fargo, we don't want to come see you on the other side of this transaction asking for this property back. So we created a team that supports sustainability. So they work really closely with our foundation as far as getting the word out on heirs property rights. What are some ways to work with CPAs or local folks in your market to provide that support, whether it's from attorneys, accountants, to kind of help you understand once you take ownership of this property or it's deeded to you or left to you, or none of that happened, right? And you're living in this home and now taxes are due and the state becomes kind of the ward of this property. And so we try to bridge that gap through having folks that are focused in that space. But certainly within the National Bar, it started as a 10 cities tour that we would work with them. The National Bar was also a partner with the NARAB 100 City Tour. And out of that, it became very apparent that just going to one city or one location one time isn't enough to have the impact that we want to have in the communities. And so part of that conversation is how do we keep this on an ongoing basis so that folks have access to it? Certainly having some digital components and some spaces that they can access the information anytime, anywhere. As a bank, we do have to walk a fine line in making sure that we're following RESPA guidelines and we're not in violation of how we are perceived as steering consumers into a certain product or program. So there's a little bit of a definition or a line in the sand that we have to draw to make sure that we're not seen in that light. But we do have a lot of focus on making sure that we can start to create a pathway that is more than just a one-stop shop, like just a one stop and then you don't hear from us again. And that's certainly something that we'd like to change and be more visible on a consistent basis and be more in communities. But certainly the tax delinquency piece is pretty big. And that's the other part. So while Generation Alpha was all getting us to get smart refrigerators, we're kind of like in that sandwich. We have our parents and some who are fortunate to still have their grandparents. are in this space where you're now inheriting property, you're taking on the other half of the equation, and we're not properly equipped because we're not educated or we don't have the resources. We don't know what's available pro bono to us or that can be provided, or you earn just enough income not to receive those. So we do try to help bridge that gap with some of the partners that we work with, but can certainly long answer to say we can certainly get you in contact within our team at Wells Fargo that can help support that in your market.
Thank you.
Well, Awana Kay and Quentin, I think you might have gotten a new customer today. I'll be calling you later. I like these programs. And I have your contact information, and we'll be sharing that with the other mayors in case Awana Kay was incredibly persuasive with all these programs that Wells Fargo has. It sounds very exciting. And so, again, thank you for your presentation and comments. And we look forward to further discussing some of these awesome services that you offer today in our office hours. So we'll move on now. Last but certainly not least, we have the Mortgage Bankers Association, Miss Wendy Penn. She is the Associate Vice President of Affordable Housing Initiatives at the Mortgage Bankers Association. In her role, she provides strategic leadership and management of the Mortgage Banker Association's efforts to facilitate new solutions to rental and housing affordability challenges. Please welcome Wendy Penn of the Mortgage Bankers Association to EMLI.
Great. Thank you so much, Stacy, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I have a very short slide deck. It's just about 3 slides. And while I hopefully launch that and get it to go into presentation mode, I will share just a little bit of background. The Mortgage Bankers Association is the trade association for the real estate finance industry. And I have been with MBA for just about 2.5 years. Before joining MBA, I was with the National Association of Realtors for 15 years, also working on affordability opportunities. And I was really drawn to this position at MBA because of the Convergence Initiative, which I'm going to talk to you about. And it is really personal to me. I grew up in a small rural town in Virginia, and I grew up in what is now called a mobile home or manufactured housing, but back then we called it a trailer. And one of my most vivid memories was around 4 years old when we moved into a double wide. And that was a pretty big deal. And while that home provided safety and security for my family, it did not create generational wealth for us because it was considered personal property, not real estate. And so when I had the opportunity to work on this Convergence Initiative, which focuses on homeownership opportunities for Black, Hispanic, and other minority groups, I thought, this really feels personal to me because my story is very similar to a lot of my family members and a lot of my friends who I've met along the way. So this is not just a job for me, it is very personal, and I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about what we're doing at MBA. So we created the Convergence Initiative, which is a place-based initiative that brings together local stakeholders with national partners to address the homeownership challenges that Black, Hispanic, and other minority communities face. And we really work to address the systemic challenges that create barriers to homeownership. And we look at those gaps in 4 buckets. The first being the information gap, which is the things that I'm sure you hear often. People think they need perfect credit to buy a home. They think they need 20% down. And sometimes they will self-select out without even trying because they think homeownership is not attainable for them. We also look at the trust gap. There is a lot of mistrust in minority communities, and for good reason, related to the home buying process. You can trace things all the way back to the days of redlining and racially restrictive covenants. But you can also look at the financial crisis in 2008 and see predatory lending, and their family members and friends maybe lost a home and they just decide this isn't for me because I don't trust the people, I don't trust the processes, and we want to address that through Convergence. Also looking at the market gap, there are housing supply challenges all across the country. We work to address that in Convergence. It is typically looking at smaller infill type of development, but also really looking at changing the systems and making it easier for nonprofit developers to do the work that they are already doing, to provide them with data and access to information, connections to help them streamline their process so that they can build more and do it more quickly. And then the resource gap. making sure that consumers as well as housing professionals, so lenders, real estate professionals, and counselors understand the programs and products that are available to buyers, so that they know what they can do to help those clients get into homes. We are currently in 3 cities right now, Memphis, Tennessee, which launched in March of 2020, Columbus, Ohio, which launched in July of 2021, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which launched in March of last year. And I do want to take a minute just to say thank you to for the support we've received in the cities where we are. Mayor Young and Memphis was engaged with Convergence even before he became mayor. He was participated in the launch event back in March of 2020 and served on the Convergence board for a while before he took on the role of mayor. And in Philadelphia, Mayor Parker and her administration have been very open and willing to talk with the local leaders of Convergence. In particular, the Office of Strategic Partnerships has had meetings with the local leaders of Convergence, which has been very encouraging. So the way we go about the work we do, Convergence is really designed to break down the silos that sometimes happen when working on affordability and housing issues. Often we found that there are groups, whether that's lenders or real estate professionals, counselors, local government, that are all working on similar issues, but maybe not in a coordinated way. So Convergence creates a framework for all of these groups to work together and partner in a way that they might not otherwise, while also bringing in national partners, groups like CoreLogic that can provide data and resources, or the GSEs who operate and work in all of these cities, but maybe have not as easy of a time working at a local level, on a place-based level. So we break down these silos and create a framework, and bring folks together through work streams in each of the cities that focus on those 4 gaps, with the goal being that we're creating new homeownership opportunities. So trying to find ways to take what's already happening in communities and leverage it, and then provide solutions where they might be needed to reach those mortgage-ready borrowers who might not understand that they can buy a home because they believe some of the myths that are out there, or because they've self-selected out because of mistrust. So bridging that gap there to get them to the information and resources and trusted providers in the communities that can get them the information they need, but also building a pipeline, because some people could just be a year or 2 away from being mortgage ready. So helping to provide opportunities for them to get those resources. It's no secret that there's a business case for doing this type of work. So one of the things at the Mortgage Bankers Associations, our members always want to know what the growth opportunity is. And when you look at the gap between the Black and white homeownership rates, to me, it's pretty straightforward that gap is an opportunity. And not just for the mortgage lenders, but also for mortgage insurance providers or title companies, or all of the industries that are part of making homeownership attainable and sustainable. So we are creating opportunities for our members in that way, and that's part of the value proposition that Convergence brings. Throughout all of this, the goal is to really elevate community partners. We recognize that the resources, the information, the knowledge is already there at the local community. Convergence does not come in and try to change the way the local stakeholders are operating. Again, it's about creating a framework and then bringing in resources from a national level that might not otherwise be there. In each of these initiatives, a local trusted nonprofit is what we call the host organization. So they are responsible for the day-to-day really management of the initiative. So there are host organizations in Memphis and Columbus and in Philadelphia that organize the stakeholders, that hold the meetings, that bring the people together, while MBA is just there to create the framework and help bring in those other resources. I mentioned briefly that these initiatives organize themselves in work streams or committees, might be another way to look at it, around those 4 gaps that I mentioned. And so these are cross-sector work streams or groups that come together and say, okay, so what do we want to focus on? So there might be a group on education and outreach in a city that says, we have a lot of great resources. Our housing counselors have a lot to offer, but maybe we need to do a better job of promoting the resources that are available. So maybe there's an outreach and education effort to consumers that we need to do. So there are pilots and programs in each city. So for instance, in Columbus, they recently launched a down payment assistance program. They also have a digital housing counseling pilot that they're operating. Memphis is running a housing supply pilot where they're actually working with a local nonprofit developer to build 11 homes. Philadelphia recognized that there is a need to bridge some of the gaps among housing professionals. The real estate professionals, the lenders and counselors don't always work well together because there are some challenges there. We need to build trust among those professionals. So they launched an education and outreach and networking series. So with each of those pilots and programs comes learning opportunities. So when you look at the outcomes and impacts down at the bottom of that slide, everything that we do, every program, every pilot, we extract some kind of learning. And then the next step is to take that information and develop some sort of a toolkit or a template or a guide that we can share not only within the Convergence Network, but ultimately the goal is to help not only the cities that we're operating in, but to be able to take these learnings and to share them more broadly. There's certainly more interest in having convergence come to cities than we have the capacity right now. So the goal is to move to this learning community, which you see at kind of the next stop on the road there, where we have a way to share these resources out. And that's something that we're actively building on. And by this time next year, we'll have a series of webinars and case studies and sort of maybe hopefully something as sophisticated as what we saw at the top of the presentation, where you can go online and download some of this information and resources and see if there's something that you might be able to implement in your city, even if you don't have a convergence initiative there. With the ultimate goal, of course, being that we are expanding opportunities for home ownership, as well as closing those gaps and providing opportunities for more minority families to build the wealth that comes with that. And I know I just have a couple minutes left, but I want to talk about sort of what's next up for Convergence. I mentioned that we are operating in 3 cities right now. And the way we have gone about selecting the cities is our members come to us. We usually have 2 or 3 that provide 3 years of funding for an initiative. And I'll use Philadelphia as an example. So Wells Fargo is one of our partners, along with TD Bank and Radian, which is a mortgage insurer. And they have committed to 3 years of funding, which really supports that local nonprofit organization that's the host. And then from there, that host and all of the stakeholders and all the folks involved in the work streams, they come up with these pilots, and then we find other financial support to launch those initiatives. We are moving to a format where we're looking to find maybe 10 to a dozen funders who will also make a similar financial commitment over 3 years, so that we can raise more money and hopefully launch 2 to 3 initiatives, 2 to 3 cities per year over the next 3 years, so that we can grow from 3 cities now to maybe having a dozen in the next 3 years. So that's something that we hope to have operational by this fall. And the great thing about that is, again, as we learn in each city, it'll create an opportunity for us to provide resources and best practices and case studies that can be implemented in other places, even if there's not an opportunity for a convergence initiative, because the demand for it is exciting. Where there are a lot of our members and cities who have approached us, so we are trying to scale as fast as we can, and we're hoping that this new approach that we're going to take starting in the fall will help us speed that process up a bit. And I am trying to be mindful of the time, and I think we're right at the top of the hour, so I will stop there.
Thank you, Wendy. We look forward to furthering this conversation during our office hours. We tried to pack in quite a bit of information during this session, so thank you very much. And thank you to everyone for joining us. You will be able to see the links and products and programs that were discussed today in the EMLI LinkedIn group. We've got a special thanks to Results for America, Wells Fargo, and the Mortgage Bankers Association, and of course you, our mayors, for joining today's session. Our next session will be July 11th on estate planning. Be sure to follow us on social media at Our Mayors and visit us online at ourmayors.org. Thank you for joining us today. And this concludes the listening and learning session. And we now move to our office hours with our guest. You are now in the office hour. We welcome you to ask our guest